people conflate humility with gratitude, and I don't think they're the same thing. I don't really think you should be humble to any other person.
Joy Taylor.
A woman, sport. Realize how hard it is to get into the position that she is in.
I'm Joy Taylor. You might know me from Speak on FS1 or Like a Girl on Fuse.
Everybody's talking about you, Joy.
Where do you think that comes from?
I don't know. I grew up in an abusive home.
Because of our trauma, we enter a zone of being tough on ourselves.
Forgetting your life is terrifying to me. I've made big mistakes. The honest answer is,
Let's talk about love. Joy, welcome to You Versus You.
thank you for having me.
I am super excited to have you here. I was actually, when they told me that you were going to come on the show, I was like, yes, that's going to be an amazing conversation. Then I got the research form and I saw all your podcasts and I was like, oh, okay. Ouch. This is going to be interesting. But I said, I love it because she's a straight shooter just like me, right? Like no holds bar, all the way in. And I guess my question to you is, have you always been like that? Or is something that you started to develop as you faced the real world and the industry and the business?
I think I've always been a tough cookie, so to speak. I was a shy kid at times. I was a bit of a late bloomer with boys. I was a tomboy and an athlete. But as far as like having a voice and a point of view, I've always had that, and I've always been surrounded by women who had a strong point of view. So it felt normal to me to do that. But I think, finding your voice is something that we talk about a lot in business and in success. And in a lot of ways, I think we're always finding our voice. We find paths and spaces where we feel more comfortable and let loose a little bit more. But, as you change, your voice and the things that you care about change. Like there's things that I've talked about, 10 years ago. I'm like, I don't feel that way anymore. But yeah, I mean, I've always had a point of view. As you get more comfortable, as you have more reps in anything, you feel more confident and it flows a bit more.
What would you say was that breaking point where you're like, okay, I'm not only comfortable in speaking my thoughts to those close to me, but I feel strong enough to I'm going to say it to the world. Because that to me, I think especially, growing up in an industry and being a manager, I started as a producer. So I started as a talent, became a manager because I was genuinely like afraid of losing the success. I was like, I might say something that might mess everything up, So I'm going to take the backseat and take that. You've been in the front and center since you started your career. What was that moment that you're like, I'm ready?
I mean, I always knew I wanted to be on air, but, being on air the first time you're on air, in your mind, you think you're going to sound like you've been doing it for 30 years, or how you do it in your mirror. And then the lights come on and you're like, ugh. But when I really felt the most comfortable and I feel like that thing had clicked on was when I was doing Miami radio and was doing my morning drive show with Zaslow and Joy show. It was just a space where, we really felt like we were just friends hanging out in the studio together every day, the whole crew, the producers, Zaz, and we had supportive managers. So we really could be ourselves. We really had a lot of creative freedom. We, were young, so we were very open about our personal lives. And that's what I always wanted to be. That's why I started in radio, because I love the idea of bringing people into the room with you in the way that a good radio show does, and building a community where, obviously kids these days don't listen to radio, but, when you got in the car and turned your favorite radio show on, you felt like you were hanging out with your friends in the way that you do with your favorite podcast now, only it was like live and happening. So when we were doing that show, there was a moment where I kind of, just came in one day and all of my anxiety about being on air went away. All of my inhibitions about, what are people going to think about me? Or, are people going to like me? Like that, all of those things that are in your brain, all those voices just kind of went silent. And that's when I really felt like a real talent for the first time.
That's awesome. I think I'm still in the stage where I don't know if I can watch my own podcast until like I'm still in that breaking point.
Rewatching your own tape is hard.
Yeah.
It's not a fun experience. What was the clip? I have to ask you, what was the clip that you watched of me where you were like,
I watched like 40 clips.
All right. But was there one where you were like, oh, she's nuts?
It was one of your podcasts where you were just like, I'm trying to remember what's the subject, but you were just going in, like you didn't out, and I was entertained. I understand why this is your career, because I was completely entertained. What would you consider your strengths?
I think that I am a resilient person, and I know we all have been through different things that we've had to survive and get through, and we all have different stories, but I've got a lot of a lot of stories. So I think I'm a resilient person. I think I am someone who likes to evolve. So I really don't like staying the same. I like to challenge myself. I like to learn new things, like to always be educating myself. Even though I have a strong point of view on a lot of things, I think if you're truly an intellect, then you fundamentally know that you know nothing. Again, the scope of things there is to know. I know a whole lot about very, 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 very little. And so I'm a curious person. And I think that that is something that is weirdly looked at as a negative thing in today's society, like changing your opinion or moving from one side to the other. I consider that to be a strength. I really like to meet people where they are. So having conversations is something that I enjoy, even if even if I leave the conversation like, well, I don't really like that person, but I had the conversation with them.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I learned something about them or learned something about what they stand for. So yeah, I think I have a lot of strengths, but the things that I'm proud of are those things.
What about your weaknesses?
I have a lot of weaknesses. We don't have enough time for this today, but we'll get into a few of them. I think I'm a very, I wouldn't say, I'm an emotional person. That's not necessarily a weakness, but if I am very triggered by something, I get really triggered by it. And until I heal it, like it's going to affect me a lot. I don't know if that's a weakness necessarily or something that everybody deals with, but to me, I feel like it's a weakness. I can procrastinate. I definitely can be a procrastinator. I'm still trying to be comfortable hurting people in conversations that are necessary. I actually just talked about this with my therapist today. She's like, so are you being passive because you don't want to have the conversation? I'm like, you don't like how that sounds, but yes. I'll protect myself before I have a hard conversation with someone. Like I'll take the brunt of that. And that's something that I've been told I need to work on, and I do need to work on because it has not served me in a lot of spaces in life, personally, professionally. Um, and I still definitely think I need to have better boundaries. Boundaries are something that I recognize was a huge issue for me throughout my life in a lot of different spaces. And I've put a lot of work in being better with boundaries. And I have gotten a lot better, but I still have a lot of work to do in the boundary department.
Why do you think that was an area where it was just hard for you to put the boundaries? Because I feel like that and maybe not having the hard conversations are kind of part of the same, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Where do you think that comes from?
They're definitely cousins. I mean, I grew up in an abusive home, and abuse is tied directly to boundaries. I mean, if you are doing something to someone that they do not want you to do, they have to either have that boundary impeded on through force or because you are not enforcing the boundary to keep the abuse from happening. So so that's just a fundamental thing that you learn as a child, that okay, like I cannot enforce my boundaries because clearly something is happening that I do not want to happen. So that I think was just my environment. And then, as I've gotten older, the other part of it probably develops, which is like avoiding conversations. Avoidance is 100% my family's generational curse. Like, you don't even have to ask. Like, we are working through it. I'm doing my best, but we will ignore a conversation until everything blows up, and then we have to deal with it anyway. So I think those two things go hand in hand.
Do you correlate maybe the way you're dealing with hard times has a story around it, or is a narrative that you tell yourself, but that narrative changes based on the circumstance that you're facing?
Yeah, I mean, I think you become a compartmentalizer in order to be successful. We all have to compartmentalize. And when you are talent, and you know this from managing talent and being around talent and being talent, you have to perform through whatever it is that's going on in your life within reason, obviously. But, if you have a shit day, sorry, I could be cursed, you don't have the option of just, being quiet that day or, going into the office and doing your work and not necessarily interacting with your coworkers as much as you want to. It's a business where you have a bad day, you still have to go on stage and perform in front of thousands of people and give it your same energy. And I think in order to do that, there is this like slide over of stress and emotion or experiences or trauma or whatever it is that you have to learn how to do. And if you do it really well, no one will ever know, but it's going to manifest in some other way. Sometimes it can manifest obviously in very toxic ways, but there has to be an outlet of some sort for it. And for me, I think one of the ways that I sort of let the air out of that is by I've been being passive rather than directly addressing things that need to be addressed.
I can relate to that. Obviously, I think when you work in our business, you start creating patterns, right? Because of those things, right? You start blocking these things. You not want to have the hard conversations. Also, too, because you're so beaten on the other side, like you're having to deal with so much and still be smiling, still be showing up to work. So it's like when you are not in the work environment or whenever it's not something that is being forced upon you and you have to face it, you're like, ah, nah, bro, I'm gonna save that headache for another day.
Right.
But what I started to learn as I started to do my own work was how am I looking at hard times? And I realized that most of us have been taught that hard times suck, run, right? Like we tell our friends, don't worry, this too shall pass. And the light at the end of the tunnel's coming up. And we rub our friend or our daughter or our kids and I'm starting to understand that instead of teaching running away, is sitting in the fire is where the lesson is. Learning how to dance in the midst of the fire is the difference. But in order to understand that, we have to separate pain from suffering. And to me, that always seemed like one thing. Pain and suffering go hand in hand. If I'm having pain, I'm suffering. And I started to understand that pain is needed for growth. Suffering is a mental state. So that was the first thing that started to really show me, okay, how do I separate my mind from the actual situation that's happening? And why is my mind perceiving information as something bad? Or how do I judge good or bad in my own life? And I was sitting New Year's and I was drinking a glass of water and I put it in, and then I go to give some water to my daughter, and my daughter was, and I was like, oh no, she didn't. Like, this is like Fiji water, mama. This is rich people water. You can't. What are you doing? And it just hit me. Like it was like, wow, she hates the water that I love, but the water actually never changed. What changed was the filter that water was going through. And I was like, well, we all have fears. We all have life lessons that have created, and then we all have trauma. And we intake all this information that we're getting with that filter. And so when we think that we're going to go be hard on somebody, or we're scared of being hard on somebody, we're scared that their reaction is going to affect us more than them. We're quicker to judge somebody because it's a lot easier to take what our fears are and give them into somebody else than looking in the mirror. And as I started to work through these things in my own life, I started to realize how many times something hard came and my first reaction was like, deuces, I'm out.
Right.
Like, this is making it comfortable, I'm out. And I started to say, well, what if I start being comfortable with just sitting there? And so I put into practice, like, regardless if it's a person or a situation, I'm going to sit enough in that fire to understand why it's even happening. And that revelation to me came because I realized I actually don't control anything. Right? I don't even know if I make it a next second. So if that means that I don't control anything, the amount of things that have to go perfectly for you and I to have a conversation or you and I to meet, which means whatever is triggering me about whatever the situation or the person is happening for me, not to me.
There's, you said a lot in there. A lot of things that have been said to me that I'm supposed to absorb in the past. So it's funny that you're saying them to me now. But the sitting in the pain or sitting or like riding in the pain and not skipping it or running away from it, you made me think of a girlfriend of mine who has two children. I don't have any children, so I'm not going to speak to childbirth, although I've heard it's quite painful. And she was adamant that she did not want to take any drugs during childbirth, which to me sounds insane because it sounds like the most
Yeah.
painful thing that you could ever experience. And she had both of her children naturally. And when we talk about it, she always says that she's really grateful she did that. Now, she's very high pain tolerant. So obviously, any women who have children just understand I'm only speaking about her. But she said something that's always stuck with me. And it made me think about that when you said sitting in the pain, that she's grateful she did it that way because she felt everything in the moment. And the next day, she felt fine because she went through all the pain in the moment. Nothing was numbed. It was excruciating, but she felt it. And then the next day, her body wasn't reacting to the medicine wearing off and then feeling the pain of all of it. And I always think about that when this conversation comes up, because although I don't know if that would be my experience, when I have something really hard happen, I do try to consciously sit in the feeling of it and not numb my way through. It's easy to have a glass of wine. It's easy to, take something to fall asleep and just like tomorrow I'll feel a little better, or let's just push this off until the next week, or let's just, get out of town and just take our mind off of it. Like take your mind off of it, right?
Yeah.
It's something that we all try to do for our friends or our family or people that we care about when they're going through something. That's our way of helping. And it is the right thing to do. I don't know if our friends would be like appreciative of us being like, yo, just sit in it. I know it sucks, but you got to deal with it. Like that's not the advice that you're going to give as a compassionate person. But I do think there is a real value to what you said of not running away from pain and sitting in the experience, going through the emotions, thinking about why it's happening, thinking about the role that you played in why it's happening. If you didn't play any role in why it's happening, did you invite this person into your life even though you were warned about them? Or did they give you signs that they shouldn't be there? Or is this happening totally out of your control? Is this something that is happening in nature, nothing that you could do anything about, but it is happening to you and you have to deal with it? All of those things are things to consider. And I've found when I do that, while I might still deal with some trauma from the situation, I know exactly how I feel about what happens, and no one can tell me what my truth is about it.
Yeah.
No one can come to me and say, you didn't take the time to think about this. You didn't process this properly. You didn't do the work with your therapist. We watched you. You were out partying, or you were drinking, or you were, smoking every night. Like you were doing something to avoid the consequences or the reality of the situation.
What I've learned as I put that into practice in my life was just try not to think about anything. Just feel the emotion. Because I realized that because of our trauma, we enter a zone of being tough on ourselves. And we say, well, I shouldn't have done this. Or, no, there has to be a lesson right now at this precise moment. And I have to have it clear, because if I don't have the lesson, and it's like, then you feel like you got the lesson and you psych yourself out with this idea of the lesson to the place where you're now confused if you're right or wrong. And you then believe a truth. And then that truth is like so put in your heart that, and I'm talking about myself, right? It's like,
No, I do this too.
oh, this is, no, it's definitely this. Like, this is what God was trying to show me. And this is, and then it's like, I block myself to anything that anybody else could say, or even to what my feelings just want to feel, because I've decided that it needs to have a box in order for me to digest it. And I am in the process and in the work of saying it's actually just okay to grieve. it's actually just okay to cry. And I don't have to find a solution in everything
Mm-hmm.
because that means that I'm doing. What life has shown me is I don't control anything. So therefore, it's not actually my job to do. The hardest thing for me to do, and the hardest thing for all of us to do, is to be still. Because we've been taught action equals results. Action equals success. Action equals happiness. Action equals, and it's like what I've processed in my life and my own traumas. I would say 99.9% of those traumas become things that affect my whole life when I try to action them, when I try to feel like I have to do something, I have to do this. And I think some of my biggest pain points, even in my road to success, have come from trying to take the bull by the horns, like in Wall Street, and sitting still over the past, even my current hardships, and waiting. I said, okay, so if it's the universe or God or whatever spirituality you believe in, if it's their job to figure it out, how do I stand still? How do I learn for someone who's been angsty to move? Learn to listen. And how do I then have the courage to act upon what I just heard? And my spiritual leader, his name is Ishmael. Ish has this way to describe this as the ocean and the wave. And I speak about this consistently because I thought it was like the best way to describe, especially our business. She's like, Lex, you've been programmed to be a wave. A wave has power, a wave has direction, a wave has perseverance, a wave can destroy a whole city. I said, but you know what's the problem with the wave? It knows it's going to break. And it's also looking left and right and saying, damn, am I going to be big enough to be served? Am I too small? Oh man, there's a kid. Should I go down? Oh, will I break in the ocean or will I break in the sand and be awesome? Or will I just tsunami into this? And he said, but here's the thing, Lex. Waves are necessary, but only when you understand you're the ocean. And the work is learning how to feel, not just think, feel you're the ocean. It resonated with me and it continues to resonate with me because I realized how many things in my own life on a daily basis were being driven by emptiness. We're being driven by like, I need to close this deal. I need to work to 12 o'clock at night because I got to get this. And it's like, no, actually, I don't. That stress is coming from that fear that if I don't, then the result is not what I'm expecting. So I'm
Right.
trying to control the outcome, which I don't control. And that's hard to face when you've been programmed our whole lives to do this.
Well, also if you come from a desperate place, or you have anxiety about money or anxiety about success, then those things will drive you as well. You just made me think of a quote from John Wooden, the famous UCLA coach that I use often, which is, don't mistake activity for achievement. And I love that quote because it's what you're speaking of. When we work, if you work in a high stress, high stakes environment, whatever it may be, or you just have really lofty goals for yourself, sometimes you can feel like you always have to be doing this. I feel this all the time, where if I take a nap or if I take a day off, or I'm just like, I'm exhausted, I'm just going to sleep. I know I have all these things that I'm supposed to be working on, but I'm just going to sleep. And there is this little voice like, you're not doing enough, like you're not working hard enough, you need to be doing this, you need to be paying attention to this, you need to be giving this your energy, you said you were going to take care of this. And it's like, am I procrastinating or am I just being present and honoring what my body is telling me it needs and what my mental health is clearly telling me that I need? And yeah, I mean, that's a balance thing, right? Like, how are you kind to yourself?
for me, what's been helping the most is trying to really define the difference between a story and reality. Because your mind will believe whatever you tell it to. And we've been told a lot of stories,
Mhm.
right? Like sitting with so many successful people around my career and realizing some are really talented, some so, but they have hard work.
Right.
And I started to think about this concept of what if we actually don't earn anything? What if it's just a gift? Because we don't actually control anything. And there's a lot of extremely more talented people, more smarter people than me that actually never get to live the life I've gotten a chance to live, or the life my clients have gotten a chance, or, so many of the people we know, and including ourselves into it. And so I was like, if I take everything as a gift and I look at my hard work, my dedication as just being good shepherds of that gift,
Mhm.
but then I take the pressure off the fact that it's something I have to earn.
Yeah, earn is it's a loaded word for sure. And it is definitely in some ways attached to ego. When people insinuate that you didn't earn something,
Mhm.
or you feel like saying you have something because you earned it. Of course, there are infinitely more talented people who we will
Mhm.
never know their name, people who have voices of angels who were born in places that do not have recording devices.
Mhm.
Like, there are a million different ways that a human's existence can come and go on this planet, and we will never be able to experience their gifts. So I would say I agree with the word earn,
Yeah.
even though I use it very often. I don't like using the word fair for that reason. Like,
Yeah.
what is
Yeah.
fair? I say fair is for Ferris wheels and fried Oreos. Like, there is no such thing as fair. What is
Yeah.
fair? It's fair that we're here and there are
Mhm.
people who are suffering
Yeah.
who don't know if they're going to make it through the night tonight. That's not fair.
Mhm.
Yes, we did things with the gifts that we have, but we were also given those gifts by whatever
Mhm.
you believe or wherever you think those come from. Where I would say, like, I like how you said it, like being a shepherd of the gift, because
Mhm.
I don't like to chalk it all up to fate, because we
Mhm.
know very, very talented people who had the opportunity
Yeah.
to shepherd their gift
Yeah.
that squandered it,
Yeah.
or did not handle it properly, or did cultivate it and then blew it all up
Yeah.
because they didn't take the time to be kind to themselves, to try and find the balance, to try and tell themselves different
Yeah.
stories, all of these things you're talking about. So I like how you put it, because earn is
Yeah.
it's a word, like it's a big thing to throw on the table.
And there's an idea too that obviously has been taught to us by society, which is just that the accomplishments means wholeness and success. And it's like the idea that we're missing something is why we're so unhappy.
Hmm.
Because this external idea that even and I heard you talk about this, and we'll talk about religion and spirituality, but even the idea that God is something external to me means that it's something you're always searching, which means you're not whole. You're not the ocean. And that is the struggle of the human condition, is that even when we say earn, is that there's this idea that there's something to even earn.
Hmm.
There's an idea that there's something more to have. And I was at a friend's house. It's this beautiful home. And I was sitting there, I was like, wow, this thing is a castle. And then my friend said, it's a castle if you look left and right. But if you lived here your whole life, it's just a home. And I said, wow, that's an interesting idea. He said, yeah, it's a big house because you have something else to compare it to. He said, the things we all have castles. It's just you're comparing it to somebody else, so you don't feel like yours is big enough.
Hmm. Well, comparison is the thief of joy.
And reaching for something that we need is the thief of our humanity, right?
Well, I mean, that's why I think gratitude is so
Yeah.
important. I talked about the idea of being humble on my podcast a few weeks ago. And I think people conflate humility with gratitude. And I don't think they're the same thing. I don't think you should give humility to everyone. I don't really think you should be humble to any other person. We're all the same. But gratitude, I think, is something that's very important because it's so much more than being, saying thank you or saying, I have a nice house. Like, I'm happy that I have this house, or I'm happy that I have this car. I see this meme all the time. You prayed for the things you have now. You used to pray for the things that you have now. And every time it pops up, it's a good reminder for me because especially when you are an aspirational person, you constantly feel like you're saying you don't have enough. There's something more to accomplish. There's something more that you need. And I think a lot of successful people struggle with that because you do reach a point where you're like, this is what I
Everything. Yeah.
wanted. This is what I worked for. But there's more, right? There's something more. And I don't know if you ever get rid of that anxiety of wanting more, but is it like, do you want more or do you want different? Is it a new goal? Is it a different goal? Is it a new challenge? Or do you want more? And I've tried to be very conscious at different points in my career and in my life to be present in the current accomplishment that I have, or the current blessing that I have, the current gift that I have, so that I appreciate it. Because yeah, you can say like, you don't know if there's a tomorrow, you don't know if there's a rest of tonight. Of course, we all live in our mortality. But you have to enjoy the things as well. And not just the things, not just the material things, like enjoy your family's health, enjoy the presence of your friends when they're all together in one place, enjoy, seeing something for the first time. Like really, to me, that is what gratitude is. And I feel grateful that I practice gratitude very naturally. Obviously, we all have times where we forget, all the blessings that we have, and we are reminded in a very, aggressive way by the universe. But, being grateful releases a lot of that anxiety for me because, man, we have a lot. We have a lot, not just that we have roofs over our heads or cars or that we have food in our refrigerator and like families are healthy and all those things. Like those are all incredible blessings that a lot of people don't have. But even just experiences, to me, like memories and experiences are the most valuable thing that I have. Like when you think of what your riches are, having experiences and being able to remember them. Because I had a grandfather that had Alzheimer's, so the experience of forgetting your life is terrifying to me. But just overall being grateful for things has really helped with that anxiety as an aspirational person.
Yeah, I always say that part of the tool I've used to manifest and to like feel things is just not think them, feel them. And I think we all think and say, yeah, I mean, you don't never know where you're gonna die. Enjoy, and then it's, even talking about your grandfather, it's like you don't actually understand the feeling of forgetting things. You don't actually understand the feeling of maybe having to say goodbye. But if you really sit in that feeling for a second, like if you can take your mind in that feeling and imagine that it was going to be all over tomorrow, will
But
you
that's
wait?
dark, though. We
But
don't like to do that.
well, but that's the thing. We don't like to do it because we're actually afraid to feel the fact that the ultimate truth is that the ultimate truth is one day you won't be here, right?
Mhm.
And so we don't want to ask ourselves, what would you change today if you know the end of the week would be it? What are the things that you would face that you have lingered on and just been lingering because you're like, no, like not yet. Like, and I say that even to myself, right? And I'll give you this experience I had this weekend. And this is the first time I'm actually sharing this, but I did ayahuasca
This weekend.
this weekend.
Oh, you're fresh.
Oh yeah. I'm squeaky clean. Okay. But here's the thing, right? I've done it before and it's been clarity, and it's been interesting, and it's been wholesome and joyful. This weekend was not that. Okay. This weekend was the complete opposite. I'm like Mary Poppins walking to the grass. I think I'm going to have the best experience. I take my shoes off. I'm like, let me get grounded. I put it in. And I put my hands down on the grass. And it was like automatically being grateful, but it was a grateful of saying goodbye. It was like, thank you for everything you've given me. And then I felt this warmth in my body, and I saw a thought come in of death. Like, you're sick with this. You have this amount of days. And automatically a picture of my daughter. And it made me sit through the pain of saying goodbye for 3 hours. And it was like everything from the screaming hysterically, crying hysterically, to be strong, be strong. And I remember being like, I needed to stop. I've had kidney stones 5 times, which they say is worse than birth. The worst pain. I've never felt a level of pain, emotional pain, as I did for those 3 hours. And when I came out of it, like the sitting down of accepting sooner or later this is going to happen, right? You just don't really know when. But it proved the theory of the difference between saying something and feeling it. And for me, it was a lesson that, I'll be honest, I'm sitting with it and not trying to digest it. But automatically what it made me understand is there's so many things in my life that I do thinking that if I don't, my bank account won't be okay. My life won't be the same. Or people will think differently of me. And I lived through what it would feel like to not have time to care about any of that. And so for me, it being a super emotional experience, now is, as I sit with it, is what are the areas of my life where I've been telling myself stories that are not actually the truth? And what are the truths that I've been telling myself that I'm not actually believing? Because the idea that it's a gift, so if it's a gift and the changes that I need to make, then am I not to trust that that same gift will continue? Or that experience is not what it is? And how many times have I said, no, I'm always going to have to deal with the anxiety of wanting more. Is that a story I'm just telling my mind? Because my mind doesn't know if it's true or not. It'll believe it. Your mind will register that shit and be like, oh, here you go. This is what it is. Hearing you speak about different things, especially about, the trauma and kind of the career struggles and all this. When do you feel is enough?
Well, I mean, in a lot of ways, I do feel like I have enough. Like I've accomplished a lot of the goals that I set out for myself personally, professionally, and I've had a lot of really amazing experiences because of my personal and professional goals being reached. But it's not so much about wanting more, it's about identifying what's next and what will fulfill me in the next chapters. And it can be scary in your life and career to like really sit with what that looks like and feels like. And I love that practice actually. When you were saying it, I was like, what do I do out of fear? And being honest with yourself about that is kind of tough, because when you're telling yourself stories, especially in the beginning of your, not even like your career, just your journey in life as a young person, and you're surviving or you're making ends meet or you're making things work, you do have to tell yourself stories. I mean, that's part of surviving. this is not going to defeat me. This is not going to define me. I can survive this. I can make this work. Like, you are telling yourself a story in order to get through it. And that is how humans survive
Yeah.
anything. So unlearning those habits and then being at peace with where you are and what the next chapters are, is a process. So I I don't feel the same level of anxiety about success that I felt before. And I think that that is kind of what success is, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I've achieved these things. Like, I wrote this down. I wanted to do it. I did it. You know, I wanted these problems. I prayed for these problems. I have these problems now. You know, I did it. Like, really being present in the experience. Like, you're talking about grief and death and that reality. I had a conversation last year about death and if I was afraid of death. And the honest answer is, I'm not. I don't want to die. But if you asked me, like, what is something that you want to accomplish before you die? Like, I don't know. I think I've accomplished, I mean, I want to accomplish more things. I want to see some other places. I want to have more time with my family. I want to have more time with my friends. I want to have more experiences in life. But there's not like a box to check for me. And I feel really proud of that. I feel like I've really lived a lot of life. I've made big mistakes. I've made great choices. I've had fun. I've had terrible times. I've been traumatized. I've had absolute bliss. And I feel really grateful at the age of 38 that I can say that. Like, that's not more, does that sound morbid? I feel like that's not.
No, I think part of growth is settling into these things, right? Part
Right.
of understanding yourself and being honest with yourself is also being positive about yourself and being able to say, okay, there's things. I always say there's muscles that even trauma develops. Like, if you have ever injured and you're in the sports industry, if you ever injured your left side, your right starts making up for it.
Right.
And it'll just create strength in that muscle that your left side does. So in rehab, what they try to do is level it back off so you don't end up having a misstep. There's things that are trauma have allowed us to grow. The perseverance that people who deal with hard times as kids have in moving comes from the trauma, right? Comes from that hardship. I had Lecrae on the show before, and Lecrae was saying, man, like, I try to teach my kids some hard times because I'm like, I got this house and I'm hustling, and he's like, Dad, I'm okay. Actually, I don't need any of these things. I don't want a big house, and I don't want. He was like, what do you mean? Like, but it's because he's like, my son has grown up in like the best quality of life
Right. Which
that
is
I
what
could
you wanted
offer.
to do. You wanted to create this environment for them.
But I think is that it's also accepting that you do have that muscle, and that muscle is beauty in it. But that muscle also sometimes needs to go back to little Joy and little Lex and say, hey, you're okay. You actually made it. You're and that's another practice that I didn't understand, like how many reactions I had and where they were coming from. So I started to think, okay, when was the first time I felt that emotion? And I started to discover these places in my youth, and it was like now having to have the conversations with the little one and saying, "Hey, man,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
you're
know if I'm
good.
ready to do that yet.
You're
Maybe
good.
that's the next
You're good."
part of the journey,
Yeah.
going to Little Joy. But sometimes it's interesting to think about. And that's funny that you mentioned that, like, his kid doesn't feel that way, because we work really hard to provide for our families and make sure that the people in our lives are taken care of in the way that we believe they need to be taken care of, because it's what we needed or what we thought we needed because we didn't have it.
Ish always says to me, Lex, no one needs saving, and you're no one's savior. And I was like, but how does that mean? I see people. No. You think that they need your saving. Now, that doesn't mean give. That doesn't mean. It's just like this idea of savior complex that we do get sometimes. And it's like the perfect example. He gave his kid all the things he thought he wanted, and his kid wants none of it. He doesn't want to grow up to have a big home. He doesn't want to grow up to have all these things. He is interested in figuring out why he feels certain things. Like, and that's.
And what an amazing childhood to have.
Yeah. And I was telling him the story of my daughter. because that was my idea about parenthood. I was like, I'm going to teach her all the stuff nobody taught me, right? So I'm going to let her struggle. But as I started to see her, and she was like one day in her ball pen, and she started to get super frustrated. She wanted to leave. She didn't know how to. She was like 1 year and a couple months. And mom came in running. No, let me take her. I said, let's just wait to see what she does. And it was like a moment where she like was super frustrated, crying, and then she paused. And then I feel like her mind said, here's how you get out. She like got up, walked to the corner, and just threw herself and got out. And in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, she's so incredible. When I started my work, I was like, oh my God, the brain has an incredible ability to solve. We just don't really know how to give it the problem because we're in this. She calmed herself at 1 year old, and her brain said, I got the answer. That's why I thought, and I realized how powerful, and I heard you talk about this, how powerful your mind is. Let's talk about love.
Mm.
In our business, I think one of the things that we sacrifice the most is that area of our lives. So it's a personal area of our lives. At least I know I have, right? Like historically, non-healthy relationships with all the dramas and destructions and everything. Do you want a family? Is that somewhere in the desire, in the dreams of Joy?
Well, I have a big family. I think you mean, do I want children and
Yeah.
a husband? I've been married. I would get married again. I would definitely approach marriage at this point in my life very differently. Um, and I don't want children. I've never wanted children, just never had a biological urge, like a physical urge to have children. I have 13 nieces and nephews and another one on the way. So I will have 14, two of which are a grandniece and a grandnephew. So I'm a generational auntie. So I feel like I have children anyway. I know, I tell everyone that I birthed them. So they are my kids, but I have a huge family. I have 6 brothers and sisters. I have 14 nieces and nephews. So blessed to have my mother with me. And so I feel like I have that family love in my life. Um, and yeah, I mean, I would love to be with a partner, a long-term partner, and have that kind of a relationship. Hope that happens. I think love in I don't want to talk bad about LA because it's like so easy. Because I don't know that I believe all of this stereotypes about the business and LA. I think it comes back to being aspirational. And I think a lot of people apply aspirations to dating and to love as well, where they'll get into a situation and then immediately start saying, is it enough? What's missing? Do I need more? Do I need different? Do I need better? And I think long-term successful relationships require a lot of compromise, require a real commitment. And in today's society, whether we like it or not, we are being programmed to believe we have endless options. And we have the same amount of options that we have always had. We just teach our brains that, okay, I don't like this movie tonight. I have 10,000 other titles to choose from, but you're probably going to end up watching your favorite movie again for the 30th time. Why? We are constantly in a space of next and move. And if it buffers, it takes too long. And what's the next thing? And slide right and slide up and slide down and like and move and comment. And I think that has really affected how we, as a society or people who are dating, like look at it. And we have to constantly fight that.
Yeah, I think I could say from a guy's perspective, um, I definitely fell into that story. I felt into the story of like there was always something better, and then I always had this thing where it was like, come in the first, I don't know, 6 months of the relationship, I'm the man, best guy in the world, my God, the parents love me. Oh, he's successful. He's educated. You know what I mean? He's like, everyone likes him. The moment it started feeling like, oh, this is commitment, oh, 1 foot out, and it was like, and it wasn't um, until the mother of my daughter uh, got pregnant, and we hadn't spent a long time in a relationship. We had just met, that I was like, no, this is not happening. This is not this. Da, 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 da. And it was and I talk about it super openly. I asked her for permission, but I've talked about it super open in the podcast historically, because it was probably the hardest time of my emotional life, was those 2 years between finding out I was going to be a father and then understanding what it's all meant.
Mm-hmm.
And in that process, everything that I think you can do as a guide to run, to judge, I did. I was at fault in a lot of things. But then something trigged, which was like, okay, what if the lesson of my life is in that person? And that small change allowed me to understand that it's like, we come into the relationship as we come into work, as we come into religion, as we come into spirituality, which is like, it's external. So the same way that I can love my car today, tomorrow is a piece of shit compared to my guy's Ferrari next to me. Like the same way that we go and we're like, okay, we go to church and we feel the Holy Spirit or whatever. And then you leave church and it's like, no. It's actually, today I believe on something else because I read a new book and that book made me feel better than church on Sunday. So now I believe in it. And it's like, there's always this idea that the thing is external. And the moment that I started to do my work, I said, oh, it's all actually in me. And the other person's prime job as your partner, as your real friend, as your real lover, is to be a mirror. And that mirror is not meant to do anything other than make you look at yourself. And man, don't we hate that. We are so kind to everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
We're really kind to people, but we hate to have those real conversations. We hate to face ourselves. We're quick to judge. And that started to transform what is nowhere near perfection, but to transform the way I started to relate in a relationship. And I think that that's the core issue, even within our business, right? Is that we feel like it's something else we got.
Mm-hmm.
We feel our partner is another addition to our value proposition.
Yeah, our
to our
assets.
net worth assets. Here is my investment portfolio, includes a woman. She's great. She has a job. She does this. She's a great mother. She cooks good and she gives me a massage. I got my life figured out.
Right.
But like everything else, the moment the job gets shaky, all this stuff, then we all get shaky. With that in mind, right? Do you feel that you're at a place in your life where you're transitioning into a new stage, a new era in your mind, new era of spirituality? How do you feel about spirituality? How's that transition feel as kind of you faced everything and face it every day? Because listen, I want to give you your flowers. Doing what you do every day in that industry, like, and surviving, you know what I mean? Like that's the real. But how are you dealing with this new stage, this new transition, and then how do you view spirituality?
So I do feel like it's a new transition. I've felt like that for a while. Even going back to last year, that I'm sort of entering a new. I don't know if this is a new chapter, but I feel the shedding, if you will. I mean, I guess it's the year of the snake, so it's appropriate. And for whatever reason, men, and I do think that universally it's happening as well. I mean, if you look at things that are happening politically, if you look at a lot of things that people are going through, a lot of things that we went through here in LA, like it just feels like there's something happening. There's a universal unrest. And I feel that personally as well. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think we all have to change and like face ourselves, hold the mirror up and grow. Spiritually, it's interesting you ask that because I grew up in a very religious home. And I grew up Baptist and we'd go to church, 3 to 5 times a week. And then youth group. And then if we travel, we went to church and, the whole bit, read the Bible every year, cover to cover, the whole thing. And I think it was because I was just all I knew. And there was so much guilt attached to
Oh yeah.
that experience. While simultaneously having a really terrible representation of what like a true hypocrite in that space looks like, I really broke away from that structure of church, of being a part of a church community. And I would dabble here and there throughout my adult life, but I feel a very real disconnect to my spiritual side, which is something that I've been working on and talking to my therapist about lately, because I've been trying to tap into it, and for whatever reason, it's not speaking back. I don't like that. It doesn't really feel like I'm whole right now
Mm-hmm.
because of that, because I do consider myself to be a very spiritual person. I'm a person of faith. I pray, like I try to be present in that space, but it's not speaking back right now. I have really strong feelings about organized religion that are not particularly popular, but I think everyone should go on their own spiritual journey, and I think that your spiritual journey doesn't have anything to do with anyone else. And I don't think that belief should be forced on other people. I don't think belief should have any place in the political space. I don't think that because you are associated with a certain religion that is a reflection of your character, positive or negative. And I think because I've had such an elaborate upbringing in church, I see it for what it is in its beauty and in its treachery, which makes it very hard for me to attach to. I know people who are the perfect representation of what Christianity is supposed to be. Just live their lives that way. They are kind, they are generous, they are understanding, they are truly angelic people. And then I know the worst people, and it's very conflicting for me. I'm like,
Yeah.
how are y'all in the same set? This is not making sense. But what I don't like about the organizations of all of it, and I'm not just picking Christianity, is like whatever you need to feel grounded, whatever you need to feel spiritual, whatever you need to feed your spirit. I love that for you.
Mhm.
Where you lose me is the preaching.
Mhm.
And that's been my experience. And I know it sounds judgy, but that's been my experience. And so I'm trying to find my own space where I can tap back into my spiritual side without those
Mhm.
restrictions. And I mentioned the guilt part because I don't know what your, spiritual journey has been, but if you were raised in any kind of traditional,
Oh, my mother's a pastor.
okay, so
My
there you
dad's a
go.
Buddhist, and my family's Jewish.
Okay, so you got it all covered.
So we can have a whole other conversation because I don't disagree with you in none of it. I have my own unpopular views on it. I agree. Like for example, when my daughter was born, everyone in my family had an opinion about baptizing and I said nothing, doing none of it. Oh, but what do you mean? I said, listen, I believe that the power of God is already in her. And I believe that she chose, at this precise moment, her soul chose to live the life experience she's living at a time when her father does not believe in that. And I'm not going to do it. And I had all kind of messages you could think
I'm
of.
sure that was
Okay.
went over very well.
It was like, but it wasn't about tradition. It wasn't about not or judging anybody in my family for whatever they believe or judging anybody, right? It's just the understanding that the idea of this, something that is outside of me, something I have to search, goes back to what we've been talking about the whole time. there's an emptiness to that. And then while I believe community is important to growth, while I believe devotion is a good way to join, like that's why teams work so well, right? Like you're devoted towards the goal of winning a championship, and there's something beautiful about unity and teamwork. My experience at church is you serve, but again, if you're not whole, you're masking the pain, you're masking the emptiness by serving. Just like we mask it by working really hard, and we mask it by other things. And so the four walls of church and the evolution of it being something that is so holy and so precious, to me, it could be if you're coming in a place of wholeness. If it's a place of worship where you are understanding. But if I was just taught to, and I'll go back to this. There's a very like two ways of looking at God from in my family: Christianity and Judaism. My family, who's Christians, we're all Colombian, and we're all taught fear God. And so for so long we've been taught to fear God that we have this teaching in our hearts where, oh my God, am I doing the thing right? God's gonna punish me. And we approach life like the wave. The Jewish side of my family, they know they're God's people. So they respect him, they don't fear him. And it changes the way they approach everything about life. They have other anxieties and other things. But when it comes to owning something, when it comes to looking at things, when they look at, like, they don't feel this shame. They're like, oh, I'm in the game. Oh, I'm doing these traditions because they're healthy for me.
Right.
Because God put this tradition so that I can spend time with my family at Shabbat, not because I'm afraid that I'm going to get punished if I don't do it. So even that to me, and then you look at my dad who's a Buddhist, and he's like, all of it is irrelevant.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's
Right.
like, all of it is irrelevant. You are the center of light. You are centered. All the gods, all the heavens, all the hells, all the gods, all the angels, and all the demons are within you. The thinner you are in life, the lighter you swim. That's what he says. And I'm just like, oh man, like, word? But it really gave me, to my point, I had such a bad experience, and I was sharing this with Lecrae, because I was telling him when I started, I was a producer, and I was like so excited to be like, I got an opportunity to work with secular artists. I broke my career through working with, general market artists. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to go and change Christian music. So I started a Christian label called Crossover Entertainment, exactly for the word. And then I went and I hid the truth, was like a rapper in this group called Cross Movement, which at the time was like, he was the Jay-Z of Christian music. And he said to me, oh man, you work with secular artists. I can't work with you. And I told Lecrae, it's one of those moments in your childhood where I can tell you exactly where I was in my room, exactly what I thought, and how I cried after. Because it was like somebody just, and from that moment, I was like, there's something wrong with this. This is not, that the understanding that there's this better than when we all are the same flesh doesn't feel right to me. So I have a lot of opinions on this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the core of it for me, because and again, our gifts. You've traveled the world.
Yeah.
I've traveled the world. We've met people from different places who are kind, who are gentle, who are living full lives, who take care of their families, who are respectful, who are not what we were taught growing up. The separation that those cause, and I talk about this all the time. It's like, okay, anything that involves humans is going to get corrupted. I get that. So then it should be very normal that I have a problem with it. Like, if we look at the purity of each of those things that you mentioned, they're all so unique. Like, we are, if there is the God, like a all-powerful God, we should be afraid of that. If you are God's people, you should feel great about that. It sounds like a great thing to be. I want to be God's person. Like, that sounds awesome. If a God is inside me, that works for me too. Like, all of these things are really beautiful ideas.
Yeah,
As
100%.
soon as you start putting people in charge of other people, then it goes sideways.
Yeah, it's that love and fear concept, right? It's like
Mhm.
we all are dealing with our inner childs, and we all have inner childs, no matter how you were born and raised. Everybody got the inner child kicking and screaming 90% of the time. Well, with that, before we end, we always have this exercise we do, and I ask all my guests. As I've shared with you throughout the past hour, I believe in the power of words. I believe that our mind just believes what we say. And because I know how hard it is for us to be kind, and I also know how powerful those stories are to our mind when we persevere and work and all this, I ask every guest to say a word or a phrase that you think Joy needs to hear today, that could change her perspective and how your body and your mind and your soul perceives the rest of this week, the rest of this month.
This was a good day for me to come in because I literally just got done with therapy. So I feel like I've had like an extended therapy session with you today. So I'm trying to think, what was my takeaway from that I need to continue to tell myself. It's okay to prioritize what you need. It's very easy, you mentioned this earlier, to put your fear on someone else, to say you're doing this for them, but you're really doing it for you, and you're telling yourself a story. So it's okay to prioritize yourself. It's okay to make the decision and stand on it. It's okay to tell yourself the hard truth, sit in the experience of how that feels, and then act on it. I think one of the things that I've been doing lately is practicing that generational curse of avoidance and trying to tell myself that I'm really doing this because I don't want to hurt their feelings. I'm really doing this because I don't want to make this situation uncomfortable. I'm really doing this because they're not ready to hear this yet. They're going to be upset, but it's really because I just don't want to do it. And I don't want to feel what I know I'm going to feel if I do these things that I need to do. And so that's what I would say. It's okay to prioritize yourself. We don't want to do things sometimes, and and that's okay too. But I find, especially when things get busy, especially when there's a lot on your plate, especially when you have people asking a lot from you, when you're having to exert a lot of energy, that just taking a moment and saying, what is it that I actually need? What do I really need to do? Not, do I need to go to the gym, or not, do I need to finish this project? Like, what is the thing I'm avoiding that's going to make me feel better? The hard part needs to be done. And then on the other side, I'll feel the release of that.
So I want you to do something, right?
Okay. I'm afraid.
You like I am so used to doing that you're doing. So just pause for a second and just say that to yourself and feel it. It is okay to think about joy.
It is okay to think about joy. I'll work on that this week.
You have to just. That's the beauty of the brain.
I will feel that this week. I will feel that this week.
You see, like it's funny because it's really, this exercise is so interesting.
But I do this a lot, though.
Because you go into that a lot.
That is my thing. You keep saying that, and it's absolutely right. Like there's a reason that we're talking about this today, because you're reinforcing a lot of good things for me. Because I will talk about what I think about something, what I thought about this, what I think happened, what I think, and I very rarely use what I feel. And maybe that's a small practice I should introduce. I'm gonna do the love fear practice thing. That feels interesting. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to start feeling the situation rather than thinking about it all the time.
I'll give you another one that I think is really good as a tool, is story or reality.
Yeah, we'll take baby steps.
Sit on that one. Joy, it's been amazing having you on. Thank you so much. We got to do this again, because honestly, I've loved the conversation and I loved your energy. So
thank you. Yeah, you need to put me on with Ish also.
Yes. You rocked. Thank you guys for tuning in to You Versus You. Please subscribe, like, and share as we build this community and we help each other to live the life of our dreams.